All right. This is our 72nd lesson, and we're pretty close to the end. We'll start next week. We'll start on our last chapter in the book. And so we're moving toward the end of the book, and I believe we'll finish it before the semester's out this fall. Okay. When we're looking at this, I want to look at some nutritionally related diseases. I'm going to look at aluminum, how it affects human health. I'm adding some more information in the book that's not in these charts or information we're putting out here, but it'd be in the book. I found some more information about various things relating to the health of plants and animals, and I've just been dealing with the health of humans. So I've added some more. I'm adding some more little tidbits here and there, and so more documentation of what we have. Aluminum, and we'll look at that. We'll look at problems with food preparation. How we prepare foods can affect our health as well. And what I want us to see here is that our health can be affected by what we eat and the nutrients that are in our food or that are not in our food that would be there perhaps if the soil was different. So that's kind of important for us because the atheist will challenge the Bible and say it's ridiculous that men lived to be nearly 1,000 years old, but I believe they did. We look at some problems with how we prepare food, and some of the ways we prepare food are kind of foolish, actually. We also have diseases related to parasites, and if you remember when we looked at hyperbaric chambers, they help the body to fight parasites. And so a hyperbaric chamber does. So if that's true, and they lived in a situation that was almost like a hyperbaric chamber, it would be easier for their body to fight off parasites. I just discovered today that they found, and this was about 1935, they found it, okay, a long time ago, nearly 100 years ago, they discovered that when they did some tests on rats, when the rats were eating roaches, they tended to have a problem, particularly if they ate roaches, and the roaches then would give them stomach cancer. And then under some conditions they didn't. And so there were parasites in the roaches that they found. And so the parasites were partly the cause of some cancer. And we've already seen that some cancers can be caused by various viruses. HPV virus can cause cervical cancer and some other cancers. Chlamydia has been linked as one causal factor in ovarian cancer. And so I saw a linkage, and it wasn't from a scientific journal, however, of liver cancer with the liver flukes. And the claim was made that autopsies on people who died of liver cancer on their livers, they all had liver flukes. Of course, it's a parasite. But anyhow, these are possibilities, things that may be causing more of our cancer rates that we have. We want to look at the organic microevolution. We look at that as well as we look at this. No known organisms use aluminum in their organic process, according to Reinke. So we don't use aluminum in our processes in our bodies. Aluminum is not used in any of the organic processes in our bodies. But aluminum is abundant in the Earth's crust. About 8% of the Earth's crust is aluminum. So the aluminum is around us everywhere we look. Its abundance in the upper crust of the antediluvian Earth's crust is unknown. We don't know what it was there. It's probably different than the present value. And of course, being a lighter element, it would tend to move around with the waters, the flood waters, as they were spinning and due to tidal action. And of course, that would put it into veins in various places. As with other minerals, the various soils contain varying amounts of aluminum. So the soils, different soils have different amounts. Here's a table that's very important. It'll show us why aluminum is a problem. We have four basic minerals: aluminum, or aluminium, as you would pronounce it in England, iron, calcium, and magnesium. Well, iron, calcium, and magnesium are essential to our health. All three of these are. And notice the atomic size, they're pretty close to the same size. Electric charge, we've got +3 and +2 is charged for +3 for aluminum iron, +2 for magnesium and calcium. So what this means is chemically, aluminum can sneak into a chemical process if it's there that iron would normally fit into, or can sneak in even where calcium and magnesium are, should be. Get into the chemistry of it, it's not my intention to. I'm not a chemist by any means. There are a number of scientists that claim that aluminum is linked with both Alzheimer's disease, ALS, that's Lou Gehrig's disease, and autism, all three of these. They claim that they're linked with it. Now then, keep this in mind, the fact that they're linked with it doesn't mean that is cause of aluminum is the cause of these. They may just go together. These diseases may cause their body to take in more aluminum and not get rid of it. That's a possibility. Because correlation doesn't prove a cause and effect relationship, the fact that people with these diseases tend to have higher amounts of aluminum in their bodies does not necessarily prove aluminum cause these diseases, although it might be a causal factor. And so that needs to be checked a little bit more. Correlation is a necessary condition for a cause and effect relationship, but it's not a sufficient condition for a cause and effect relationship. And so it's necessary that you have correlation, but if you have correlation, that doesn't mean that you have proven the causal, that it's a cause. All right. And so it doesn't work the other way. That would be the fallacy of affirming the consequent. It's a logical fallacy. Right? Although it could be, but it doesn't prove it. Krusky and others have found that high concentration of aluminum were found in the bloodstream are associated with the softening of the bones and encephalitis. So there's two problems that occur if we get excess aluminum in our bloodstream, and our bones will soften and we'll get encephalitis. These two are linked with it. They found that aluminum distributes across the placenta, of course, when a woman is pregnant, to the fetus and into breast milk as well, and the hair of the child, and as well as all other tissues and fluids, including the brain. It gets into the brain. So an excess aluminum will get through the placenta. Aluminum, we have it in a lot of cosmetics, deodorants. They use aluminum. It kind of stops up the pores so you won't sweat, which I don't think is necessarily a good idea. And some prepared foods have aluminum in them. Antacids have aluminum because it inhibits production of acid in our stomachs. And certain vaccines, they put it in vaccines. We'll look at that in a minute. Many vaccines, at least in the past, they may have stopped doing it so much, contain aluminum as an adjuvant. And what this means, an adjuvant is something that will make the body react. The body doesn't like the aluminum and it reacts to it and begins to try to respond to it. And when it does, then it helps it to develop an immunity to the other things that were with the aluminum, and that would be your vaccine. So that's what they've done with it. The fact that aluminum heightens the body's immune response means that the body is having a negative reaction to the aluminum. It's not good. We don't need that aluminum. Our body doesn't use it. Body has to get rid of it, eliminate it. I suspect this aluminum being used as an adjuvant is dangerous. Seems like that it causes health problems of some sort. So again, I can't say that it does, but it seems likely that it may or probably does. Reinke discusses some problems with using aluminum as an adjuvant, and he discusses them. And since the kidneys excrete the aluminum, our kidneys take the aluminum and excrete it through our urine. And when that happens, the kidney of adults and little young children don't function as well as they do as normal adults. Older adults and young children, their kidneys don't function as well as they do in a regular adult. And so they will tend to be more affected by aluminum being put in their system. And so the increased aluminum, their body can't get rid of it as easily. And there's some think that maybe there might be a linkage to that and some of the problems that children have had because they give them shots. Both infants and elders are two groups whose kidneys tend to not function like a normal adult's kidneys. They don't function as well. And of course, as we get older, our kidneys don't function as well. This might explain the apparent increase in Alzheimer's disease and autism. And so some of the shots, inoculations that they give people, giving them shots every year for flu, and those flu shots, if they had this aluminum in them, may contribute to Alzheimer's increases in it. And giving it to real young children may contribute to the autism that we've had. We have a family at church that they claim their son was normal when he's about 3 years old, and they gave him a series of shots at the doctor's office. The doctor gave him, and he became he had autism after that, and I have no doubt that they're telling me the truth. So it's possible that it had aluminum as an adjuvant to it. All right. I know the aluminum oxide, I know this from my background in electrical engineering and physics. Aluminum oxide is an insulator. And if aluminum contaminates the dendrites in the brain, those are the cells that transmit information from one cell to another by electrical impulses, seems to me that it might be the cause of Alzheimer's disease or autism. Because the aluminum, if it does get in the brain and gets oxygen to it, it'll turn into an insulator. Pure aluminum is it's a real good conductor of electricity. Not the best, but it's a real good conductor. But when it gets a little bit of oxide on it, it turns into an insulator. And it'll block the flow. And the dendrites might not be able to communicate. That may be part of the cause of Alzheimer's and or autism. And of course, putting this excess aluminum into the body through shots or inoculations, while inoculations are good and can be good at least, they certainly might not be good with the adjuvant, having put aluminum in there to trigger the response of the body, make it respond. Since dendrites are involved in cell-to-cell communication, it seems that it might be the cause of these diseases. Just suspecting it. I'm not claiming it is. We don't know if the excess aluminum in the brains of people with Alzheimer's and autism, they know they have excess aluminum. But we don't know if that's the cause of the disease or the effect of the disease. Does the disease cause their body not to be able to get rid of the aluminum, or did the aluminum get in there and cause the disease? That's the question. That's a good question. Unfortunately, none of my college majors require me to take organic chemistry, so I haven't had any organic chemistry. I kind of regret that when I was a college professor and could take classes free, I didn't go ahead and finish out a chemistry major. Kind of regret that I didn't do that. Let's look at food preparation now. I got off the aluminum. A lot of our stuff, like cans, we have aluminum cans and soft drinks, and we have aluminum cooking for aluminum foil and all. And we may be getting more aluminum than we need, okay? Most fruits are picked before the fruit ripens. That's the way how we have it. Our fruits grow like in places that are hundreds of miles from us. And it's picked, and it's picked while it's green. And it ripens while it's being transported. So we don't have near the nutrients. The nutrients in a green apple are not the same as the nutrients in a ripe apple. I just use an apple as an illustration. They pick the fruit, they treat it with a sulfide to slow its process down, and other chemicals to give the fruit an appearance of being ripe. The reason they treat it is because the plants of the fruit will give out a gas, and that gas will cause other fruit to ripen. And so we won't go into that, but there is a particular gas that's put out by a fruit, and it triggers the ripening of other fruit around it. If fruit does not have the full nutritional value when it's not picked when ripe, however, it doesn't seem to have the full nutritional value. Some of the nutrients are developed the last few days of the ripening process. So the fruit, if we went out to our own orchard and picked it ripe and ate it, it would be much tastier. We can tell by the taste of it. And it's going to have more nutrients. It will have developed those nutrients to the fullest. Many fruits and vegetables are sliced and diced and cooked and frozen, all of which reduce the nutritional availability. These processes reduce the nutrients. And that's just what we get into. We have that problem with our nutrients because of the way we live in our world. Many of our fruits and vegetables are overcooked. We destroy some of the nutrients when they overcook them. Most of our grains, such as wheat, rice, barley, and so forth, are refined. The outer part of the grain, what's called bran, is milled off the grain. Now, I've added, I don't have it in these notes here, but I've added it to the book. I added it today. I made these slides out a week ago, and I didn't add this to it. Just didn't have time to finish it. But the milling process takes off the surface, what's called bran, and what's left is the white part of the grain, and that's really mostly starch. There's almost no nutritional value in that starch. And as early as around 1935, they had experimented with rice, and I have this in the book, and they found that rice, when they milled off the coating of the rice, and of course they take this coating and they'll feed it to animals, okay, because it's really good. The animals really get healthy from it. And what they do is they fed this to chickens, and lo and behold, and that's all they fed them, and the chickens died. Okay, they developed some diseases and died. And they took another group of chickens, they fed them, they began to get this disease, and they gave them the part that had been milled off, and this was rice, it wasn't wheat, but basically the same process. And when they began to add this to their diet, the chickens got healthy again. And so they were sick and about to die, and rejuvenated them. So what we get into is our white flour, whenever they mill it out, it has almost no nutrients but starch in it. They enrich it, and they'll say enriched on the label of the flour sack, and they say enriched flour. Well, what they've done is they've come in and added some minerals and vitamins to it. Not all the minerals and vitamins taken out. Some of them are man-made minerals and vitamins, which may or may not be good. And they've added those to the flour. So it's called enriched flour. And if they'd just taken just the whole grain and milled it, they'd have had all that in there to begin with, and they wouldn't have lost it. Now, what you get into, when I was in school, younger, and I started to school in 1949 at public school, first grade, we learned in a classes called health classes, and health and hygiene, I think was the name of the class. We had one every year, and they taught us more and more. And we learned that whole wheat bread, whole grain bread, was much, much better for you than the white bread that we were eating. And we learned that, and we were taught that in school. I don't know whether that's being taught in school anymore or not, but that was proven to be a fact as early as about 1935. It was proven to be a fact as early as that, with some experimentation, scientific experimentation. But so your wheat and your grains. Now, if you buy bread, it may say whole wheat bread. Whole wheat bread doesn't mean it's whole grain. It means they don't have anything like barley and other stuff in it. It's just wheat. So that's the labeling fools people to think they're getting whole grain bread. And unless it says whole grain, it probably has the coating, the brand milled off it, and they've enriched it. And particularly, they'll say enriched. They've added some minerals and vitamins to it. That bran that they mill off the wheat is fed to livestock because it's very nutritious and it makes them healthy. So we can grow livestock and have beef and pork and things of that nature. The remaining white flour or white rice is then enriched. Some of the minerals and vitamins that are milled off the grain are put back into the enriched flour. Some of those that are put in are man-made and may or may not be good. Atkins, in his book, he wrote, the devastating effects of these refined carbohydrates first began to materialize in 1920 when a new word entered medical lexicons: myocardial infarction, the scientific term for heart attacks. It introduced in 1920. In 1920, it come into the lexicons, which is a dictionary. All right. Now, hard as it may be to believe, he goes on and says, heart attacks were unknown before the 20th century. The first description of a heart attack in a medical journal appeared in 1912. We have the food refiners to thank for its appearance, is what he claims. I'll be right. Refined carbohydrates are not only removes many of their nutrients, but refining also removes fiber from the foods, which fiber is very helpful to our diets as well. We're just learning that. So he said, if we go back here in 1920, but it was actually just a little bit later than that, about 1925, I think it actually. But it occurred into the medical journals in 1912, entered in there. And many fats are hydrogenated, and so we can, and that's from hydrogen. And what they do is they give it longer shelf life. So they add this to it to make it where it has a longer shelf life. And hydrogenation interferes with the metabolism of the good fats, omega-3 and omega-6, according to a study here. And that's that Kumaro study, and I'll cite it in the book as well. Of course, refined sugar is also devastating to health, as are some food preservatives. Some of the preservatives, nitrates they put into stuff, for example, can be bad for your health as well. Might find that I suspect, this is suspicion of mine, that GMOs, genetically modified organisms, might be detrimental to our health because they're putting pesticides into the genes of corn and other stuff. We're eating pesticides when we eat that corn. We peel some of our fruits and vegetables, and many of the nutrients are in the peels, and some fruits and vegetables. Instead of eating some people peel their apples, and a lot of nutrients in the apple peels, in the peelings of the apples. They throw them away. I eat the apple whole with the apple and the whole peeling as well. There's a lot of nutrients in the orange peels, but we throw them away too. We just don't eat everything that we maybe should be eating. And that may affect our health as well. Alzheimer's is also related to a cat parasite. Again, whether it's causal or just goes with it, we don't know. But the Journal of Parasitology, HollandPress.com, and I cited it here. This is something new that they just recently discovered. Recently, as this is the year 2022. I remember a correlation does not necessarily prove there's a cause and effect relationship. So the fact that people with Alzheimer's, a lot of them have this cat parasite doesn't necessarily mean that the cat parasite caused the Alzheimer's, but there's thinking that it might be causal. And malaria is caused by a parasite that is usually transmitted by a mosquito bite, but it can be transmitted by blood transfusions as well. Cycle of malaria parasite, and this is a link in Medicines for Malaria Venture, mmv.org. Other diseases are related to various parasites. We have a number of them. Here's a link of a list of parasitic diseases in humans. Now, we've already seen in our earlier studies that hyperbaric chambers help the body to fight off parasites and to resist them. So this would help us to live longer in the antediluvian or pre-flood world. Here's your link, www.cdc.gov/parasites/AZ/index.html. And so there's your link to it. Yes. HTTP sites are not secure. HTTPS sites generally are much more secure. That S is for secure. In this chapter, we have established that there's an optimum values of a number of vitamins and minerals that are required for organisms to be healthy. And the absence of that optimum causes the health to deteriorate. We're taught in our public school systems that all organisms evolved by macroevolution, adapted, that is, it adapted to the conditions that existed. And so they adapted themselves to the conditions they found themselves in. I find that interesting. It makes me wonder if they evolved to the conditions they found themselves in, and then why is it all organisms evolved to an optimum condition under which they never lived? That's very interesting. Why is their organism adopted or has an optimum condition under which they don't live? Why didn't they evolve to conditions under which they were living? Why did they not evolve to conditions existing when they were evolving? And another point I would make, we don't have any transitional fossils. And in reality, there's 4 or 5 transitional fossils that they claim are transitional, but they just are pretty easy to answer that they're not transitional fossils. The jury's still out on the effects of aluminum upon our health, and they haven't decided yet. Probably need more research on it, but I suspect it's not good. Aluminum is not good. Pharmaceutical companies have produced pharmaceuticals that are unhealthy. It's possible that their use of aluminum as an adjuvant in vaccines has caused health problems. So all of these things are things that have affected our health. There are a number of parasites that cause health problems. We get into these parasites. And so these parasites can cause health problems. Various companies have modified the DNA of various organisms. And there's a possibility that this may have bad results. I strongly suspect it will cause bad results. not improve upon what God has created. And so whenever they try to mess with the genes or something, they do not improve it. You can't improve on God's creation. That's my contention. Organic macroevolution, I believe, is irrational and should not be believed or followed by God's people. Now, this ends chapter 16, I believe it is, and we'll get chapter 17, hopefully starting next week. And in that chapter, we'll be dealing with the question of the scientific method, looking at it. We've already talked about it to a certain extent, so we'll go back and review just briefly what we've already learned, and then we'll make application of it to my flood model, and I'll make predictions of things that I think can be found or are likely to be found to establish my model even fuller. A scientific model, if it predicts things that actually come about, then the model is good. And so I'm going to make 4 or 5 or 6 predictions of things that I believe would help to establish that my model is correct. Are there questions? All right.